One of my least favorite theories is that throughout all of One Piece, Shanks is secretly evil. I don't like it. I don't like it because I feel like it undermines everything about Luffy's journey because Shanks is the guy that showed Luffy what it's like to be a pirate in the freest sense of the word. That being said, really only one panel in this chapter has anything to do with that statement. Hello, Internet. I am the hero of Julios, once again with another One Piece chapter summary. This week's chapter is chapter 1134, The Owl Library, a location I am very interested in for two reasons. One, I like books. Two, I like owls. Putting them both together just saves me a walk. The chapter art this week, though, it is a send off to Frankie, which I mean, not Frankie himself, but in Japan, Frankie's voice actor is retiring. This is also the man who did the voice of Mr. Two Bon Clay and Django. So this guy has been voicing One Piece characters since before my younger brother was born. That's how long this guy has been voicing not just One Piece characters, but has been a voice actor. And he's going into retirement. That's a wild thing to think about, that One Piece has been going on for so long that we've actually had to rotate the voice actors of even the main cast now. Like, I know, I think Big Mom's voice actress passed away, unfortunately. Mihawk's voice actor passed away. I think maybe Dragons passed away. This is all in the Japanese version. I believe in the dub we've had a few voice changes for other reasons, not really retirement or passing away reasons, but just things like that. So in every version of One Piece, the sub, the dub, the live action, I'm sure even like radio dramas if they have them, Oda approves of the Straw Hat crew. Other characters get a pass in certain directions. Obviously, there are some things that are mandatory based on the context of the manga. For example, Pika has to have a very high-pitched voice no matter which dub it's in because that's the joke. He is a giant. He has a squeaky high-pitched voice. That's the joke. It would fall flat if you gave him a gruff voice that fit his body. But for most cases, it's just, it is what it is. The guy who voices Buggy in the dub can sound almost nothing like the guy who voices Buggy in the Japanese version because it's just whoever we got to fill the role. The Straw Hat crew, on the other hand, is approved by Oda in every dub, as far as I know. This is always run past him. Maybe it's something in the contract or what have you, but that's the thing. So Oda, I won't say he personally knows each voice actor from the other regions, but he does have a personal relationship with the Straw Hat crew's voice actors in Japan, to the point where each of them even got to answer a question corner in character. Frankie's voice actor answering questions about Frankie that technically became canon because they were answered by Frankie. So yes, this lovely send-off is a giant robot Frankie with the Straw Hat crew riding on him as they fly off towards tomorrow, where Frankie will most likely sound very different in the dub. I doubt anyone's going to be able to replace a voice like that. The reason I've been saying Frankie's voice actor instead of his actual name is because I am bad at pronouncing names and I do not want to do him the dishonor of saying his name wrong. But I will put it here on the screen, that way you at least know who to look up. So, the actual chapter itself starts off with Luffy personally thanking our benefactor Saul as in the most old-fashioned way possible. Luffy strikes up an old-timey pose and he says, "Hey, I wanted to thank you personally for taking care of one of my youngins for me. It's very nice of you to do so." And they're all like, where did you learn how to talk like that? And Luffy's like, I know things. And obviously Saul finds this hilarious. Robin finds this hilarious because Robin vibes with Luffy almost as much as Usopp does. And Saul says he's very proud of her. She finally found them. And she even says, in agreement, she found friends who will fight alongside her, who will protect her, who do care about her. And once again, it moves the entire crew to tears as they all proudly proclaim they would willingly, die for this woman to protect her, as any member of the crew would do for each other. I mean, Luffy declared war on the government to, save Robin. He beat up Arlong to save Nami. He literally challenged one of the 4 emperors to get Sanji back. So it's very touching, this moment. I know there's kind of a split in the community right now because of the whole Saul thing, because hey, we don't I know Oda pulls his punches on death in a lot of cases. One of the most extreme cases, in my opinion, being Pound. Now, I know there's some debacles as to why Pell, came back, why Pell didn't die from explosion. But effectively, the will of P was born from this joke. That being said, we have not seen Pedro come back to life, so take that what you will. Maybe, some characters will actually stay dead. Personally, there are some characters who I wouldn't be shocked if they turned out to be not dead. For example, Big Mom and Kaido. I cannot say that a man like Kaido, who literally trying to end himself was his hobby, you cannot convince me the man did not try a volcano at least once, because that seems pretty obvious to me. But he probably jumped in, volcanic eruption happened, and when he landed elsewhere, he was like, man, guess that doesn't work either. Turned into a dragon and flew home. Anyways, whether you feel one way or the other about Saul, personally, I like that he's back. I like that he's alive. I like that there is a happy ending to Robin's story, and I don't think it diminishes Saul's sacrifice in the moment, because Robin believed he was dead, Saul believed he was dead. Personally, I even think Kuzan believed Saul was dead. I don't know. I'm not really good at arguing this kind of thing, but that's where I stand. I like that he's alive. I think it's a nice plot twist. I'm okay with it. Speaking of people who are surprisingly alive, Lilith flies up to Saul and she goes, "Hey, Saul, remember me?" And Saul's like, "No, I don't. Who are you? Why are you flying? Have we met before?" And Lilith goes, "Okay, I'm Vegapunk. I'm flying because the atmosphere here is great. And yes, we met before, but I was an old wrinkly man, and now I'm a young woman. I guess I see the confusion here. Okay, Jinbei, bring the thing!" As we see Jinbei pull out this giant metal crate. And inside that crate, Lilith tells us, is Stella, the original Vegapunk body. Now, I know we just talked about, he's not really dead. Wow, what a killjoy on the drama of his passing. The second we saw the satellites were alive and well inside the egg sphere, honestly, the fact that they can upload themselves individually, we really should have seen it coming that Stella's mind is probably fine as well. Why he didn't become a part of the amalgam, I'm not really sure. But Lilith tells us that inside this crate is a vat containing a clone of the Stella. Not a satellite like Lilith and the others, but a real true blue clone. 1-to-1. This is the Vegapunk that visited Elbath 20 years ago. Lilith goes on to explain that the reason this clone exists isn't because of Deus Ex Machina, although it is kind of Deus Ex Machina from the perspective of a reader. The reason this clone exists is because the government watched Vegapunk like a hawk. They knew where he was. They had agents being like, "Do you have eyes on the Egghead?" "Yes, we have eyes on the Jimmy Neutron clone." And so they kept, an eye on his big old head. So Vegapunk made a clone of himself, and that clone went to Elbath to converse with Saul, to talk to Dragon, to learn things about the outside world. This is the Stella that wandered around. Now, depending on how clones work in the One Piece world, and depending on how clones work in the upload brain thing that Vegapunk does, this Stella may know what happened to himself. the Stella might not know what happened to himself. He may actually just be blank memoried for the last 20 years, and he's just going to wake up and be like, oh, hello, who are you? Because you got to remember, the satellites aren't actually that old. Lilith is a full-grown woman. Yes, Shaka was a full-grown man before he got exploded. But the Vegapunk satellites didn't exist during Kuma's flashback, which means they have to be at least 2 years old at most. Which means the Stella of 20 years ago wouldn't remember them. With the Stella of 20 years ago, I'd have to look up I'd have to look it up to see how long ago he, chopped his head and made the Wi-Fi connection. But yeah, depending on how all of that culminates together, we'll see how this Vegapunk responds to everything that happened. It might honestly be a Lilith has to bring him up to speed before we can actually get him connected back up to Egghead. Unfortunately, the conditions to reanimate or awaken this Stella is not currently met. Lilith actually needs to spend time building a system here, make a lab, get some stuff together. I mean, Elbaf is a perfect place for that. Safe, relatively. There's pretty good atmosphere for things like this. But right now, we cannot just bring Stella right out into existence. More importantly, though, Bonnie tugs on Lilith's leg and brings about a great question. Does this mean we can help my dad? And Lilith responds with, that's the idea. So, hey, it's not, stuffing his body into the Seraphim like I wanted, but if we clone Kuma, there is a way to bring him back, I guess. He'll be a living, breathing person, and maybe with the Paw power, well, I'm not really sure how to get the memories back into him, though. That's still the hard part. I still believe in the soul theory, but we'll have to find out. Honestly, it might just be it might be an interesting circle, Kuma wasn't really Bonnie's dad, but he raised her like he was, and Bonnie's not really clone Kuma's mom, but maybe she'll raise him. It depends on how long it takes to get this clone thing up and running. But as they're all talking about cloning and bringing back the dead and whether or not death is even a relevant thing, we get to meet Saul's assistant, Ange. Or at least that's how I'm pronouncing it, because I have a friend named Angela, and she's called Ange for short, so that's how I'm going to pronounce it. Anyone can correct me, or once the anime gets to her, I'll get corrected. But for now, I'm saying Ange. Ange comes up, she introduces herself to them, she's Saul's assistant, it's nice to meet you guys. If you want, I can give you a tour of the Walrus School that's over there, and that's when Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp just book it. They're running, Luffy wants to explore, Usopp wants to explore, Zoro's going because, hey, it's a direction and that's where he's going. Frankie and Jinbei, they're interested in the tree itself, the Atom Tree. Jinbei and Frankie are more interested in the tree itself. I believe Chopper and Brooke are going to accompany Robin to the library. I don't know where Sanji and Nami are going. Let me double check that real quick. Okay, so it looks like Nami's also going with the library group. Sanji's going to protect her. So we got effectively, I'll say, 2.5 groups now. We have the trio splitting up to go to the Walrus School. We have everybody else going to the library. And then Jinbei and Frankie, I don't know if they're going to go into the library or if they're just going to examine the tree itself. So that's kind of left up in the air. But we'll follow Luffy and Usopp first as they end up being chased by giant children, 2 giant boys. They chase after the pipsqueak humans, as they call them. They're like, we're gonna capture you, pipsqueaks. We're gonna play jailers and prisoners. That sounds like a fun game. Probably a very Elbaf warrior game to play. And as they're running from the giants, Zoro's like, hey, Luffy, should we just cut them up? I got a sword. And Usopp's like, listen, I get it. They're 40 feet tall already, but they're still kids. We cannot just hurt them. Let's just keep running. So as the 3 of them are running from these children, Luffy obviously playing the game, the other children reprimand them. We see, I think it's 3 other little kids. They yell at these 2 other boys because it's it's mean to call humans pipsqueaks. It's rude to capture them. It's not nice to fight. It's weird. That's not what you would expect Elbaf to teach its children. So, naturally, Usopp and Luffy are very confused. Luffy's like, "What are you talking about, you little brats? You're supposed to be the mighty warriors of Elbaf." And they're like, "Hey, you can't say brat. Brat is a mean word." And Usopp's like, "It okay, first, it's okay to call us pipsqueaks. That's not an offensive term. We're okay with that. Second, aren't you guys interested in, like, pillaging, plundering, fighting your enemies?" And the little kids are like, "No, no, no, that's not a nice way to do things. That's mean. We can't do things like that." And a fourth voice says, "Doing things like that isn't in anymore." And to which Zoro goes, "Hang on, that last one was an adult's voice." And the little kids are like, "Hey, you guys should probably, step closer or further away, because you're gonna get yelled at, because you're standing on Miss Ripley." As we zoom out to see Ripley, the biology teacher, which is funny. I was reading the chapter when my brother came by, and I said, "Oh, new character. She's the biology teacher at the Walrus School." And my brother just goes, "Obviously, biology." So, yeah, if I had a nickel for every time Luffy accidentally stood on the cleavage of a giant woman, I would now have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's kind of funny that it's happened twice. But Ripley goes on to explain to Luffy, and subsequently us, the audience, that the former king of Elbaf, King Harold, he was trying to steer Elbaf away from their old traditional ways. He did not want to seek war with the other nations, but instead seek trade and understanding. This caused him to butt heads a lot with the other chiefs of the villages and the rest of the island as a whole, which is interesting. It's a hard thing to stand on one way or the other. Personally, I believe that traditions exist for a reason. Traditions are important to keeping your culture, because if you let go of your culture, if you let go of your past and just pretend it didn't happen and just pretend it's not there, who were you and what have you learned from? But at the same time, if you cling to tradition and absolutely nothing else, you can't grow and change, you cannot improve. So I'm interested. It's very interesting, because Elbaf, at first I thought this was just going to be mystical adventure, but it seems like we're starting to set the roots for a tradition versus advancement plotline, which is interesting, to say the least. Regardless, though, the king has passed away, and due to the nature of his passing, the people of Elbaf refuse to accept Loki as their king. As a result, Elbaf is without a king right now. Kind of makes me wonder why Haruden was listed as a prince, because if he was the prince, wouldn't he now be the king? Because the other prince is no longer worthy of being king. But hey, I'm sure we'll learn more about that once we actually have that feast together and talk to Haruden ourselves. But we learned from Ripley that the children she's trying to teach the children how to be better, how to be more mature, how to be very polite. So, as she says, "Please excuse my brats and their crappy behavior." And they're like, Miss Ripley, you just said the mean things." And she's like, "Do as I say, not as I do." Ange comes over and, sort of asks Luffy to, please stay within eyesight. "I'm sorry if the children were bothering you." And obviously Luffy brushes it off. But this is where we leave off from Luffy. We then cut to Robin holding a book, walking with Saul, as Chopper and the rest are with her. And Saul tells her to be careful with the book she's holding as we enter the Owl Library. As soon as we step in there, the book almost flies from Robin's hand as it grows to a gigantic size, plumping on the ground as it does so. Saul then goes on to tell us that in this strange library, books specifically are gigantified to a point where giants can read them, as he shows the Owl Library to Robin and tells her, "Behold, this is the work of O'Hara. These are the books that were saved. Robin gets teary-eyed. I get, a warm, fuzzy feeling in my stomach. Like I said, these episodes are going to be very, very tear-filling to watch once they come to the anime. But it's nice, and I really want to know why it works this way. If you look at the panel itself, you can see there's a giant owl next to a chair, so I'm wondering if it's a human who ate some kind of, or not a human, I guess a giant, who ate some kind of zone fruit that turns him into an owl. Is it a mythical zone? Because I swear, if it's another mythical zone, Oda, listen, I love the idea of mythical zones, but if every character we meet from this point on is going to be a mythical zone of some kind, what is the point of the other categories? What is the point of Logia being strong? What is the point of Paramecia being random and silly if everything is just going to be mythical zone? I get it. Eames probably going to be mythical zone. That makes sense. Mythical zone, probably dragon fruit Western model or demon fruit, period. I that's fine. But can we please just have can it be an owl that ate the big or not the big fruit, that one's been taken, but the book giant fruit, the I don't even know what to call that, the page fruit, because the book fruit already exists and the big fruit already exists. So what devil fruit would cause books specifically to gigantify? Unless it's some kind of devil fruit that shrinks things? No, because then that would be the opposite. Well, whatever the reason, I'm guessing devil fruit. I'm guessing it has something to do with the weird owl that's sitting next to a chair. But the important thing is, the spirit of O'Hara lives on here. And thanks to the efforts of Vegapunk and Saul and the new Giant Warrior Pirates, Robin finally has that closure. She knows that the efforts of her home island were not in vain, and the scholars of O'Hara didn't die for nothing. But that's not where the chapter ends. We get to cut back down to the underworld, because Loki is such an interesting character to listen to, as he is talking on a transponder snail, a new model of transponder snail, mind you, with a mysterious third party. The transponder snail itself is a snow model, definitely one I would get, which also has voice recognition capability. My guess is that's Loki has one of those because, he can't really pick up the phone right now, so he's probably like, hey, snail phone, call friend. This friend Loki calls Shaggy, which in the other translation that I was reading before the official translation came out, it was some kind of honorific for a duke. So I don't know if this is just a term of endearment, if the guy's name's actually Shaggy, if Shaggy is just a very hairy guy, or if Shaggy is a man who ate the dog fruit, Great Dane model, and we just got Shaggy and Scooby-Doo fused into one character via a devil fruit, Definitely not a Full Metal Alchemist flashback. But as Loki talks to this person, he tells him, hey, are you still traumatized from that event a little ago? And the voice is like, yeah, I'm still kind of reeling from it. And Loki goes, man, that's a shame. If I was where you were, I would have just slaughtered everyone around me and solved the problem. And the voice is like, oh, I wouldn't have gone that far. And Loki's like, well, I'd have done that for you. And he was like, oh, Loki, the more and more we talk, because apparently these two have been talking for a very long time, the more and more we talk, the more and more I realize what a nice guy you are. To which Loki immediately shuts that down and says, do not call me a nice guy, because I am a very bad man, and I will hurt you if you call me nice again. So I'm starting to teeter closer and closer to the Loki is a good guy theory, because I don't know. Oda kind of introduced Loki in a very similar way to Zoro, as people have pointed out, and Zoro didn't really turn out to be a bad guy, now did he? So, yeah, starting to lean towards Loki being a nicer guy, which then raises the question, how did Loki get blamed for the death of his father? Or did Loki kill his father? Or is maybe King Harold not dead? This is a setup? A trick, a scheme, if you will, because the chapter still doesn't end there. We get one more set of pages where we see Dory and Broggy partying with the other giants. They're kind of having like a pre-party for the Straw Hats. You know, they're already drinking, they're already enjoying themselves. But the dilapidated castle behind them, we cut to the interior of it, and we see a summoning circle. Similar to the ones that the five elders came out of, except it doesn't have any numbers on it. And from that circle, we see what I can only assume is a young woman and a man who looks like Shanks. I will preface with looks like because I'm also on board with the Shanks has an evil family member. Because again, going back to the very beginning of my little rant here, I refuse to believe Shanks is evil. I refuse. So this guy looks like Shanks. We know because of film Red, the whole Figureland thing. He's got a father. He may very well have a brother. This could be an uncle. Either way, these two are probably members of the Gods Knights, which kind of implies that the Gods Knights might know Eam. So maybe those members plus Figureland, Garling, they probably know about Eam. How many people know about Eam now that we're talking about it? Well, anyways, summoning circle, guy that looks like Shanks. This is probably the same individual that showed up to talk to the Gorosei, because once again, like that guy, Oda refuses to show us the scar side of the Shanks face. We only see the nice clean side that didn't have big claws go through it. That being said, who is this individual? What are they doing teleporting right behind Dory and Broggy, as well as the rest of the giant warriors? And how is this all going to tie together? Unfortunately for us, we are on a break next week due to Christmas, and we might be on a break next week due to New Year's. I kind of forget how Shonen Jump's schedule works. Regardless, I do want to say, according to my calendar, it'll be Monday the 23rd when this video goes up. So for those of you watching the day it comes out, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I will see you next time. Thank you for watching as always, and I will see you in the next video. This is the Hero of Julios, Xing out.